This brand new 80mm F-22 is what the original 90mm should have been. Hey there, I'm John. This is Two Brothers RC, and this is the Freewing 80mm F-22 Raptor. Oh, by the way, I need to mention our sponsor for this video, which is you, the Two Brothers community. Huge shout out to everyone who signed up for a channel membership on twobrosrc.com/supporters, which made this possible, especially Michael Smith and Sarasota RC Squadron, who both signed up for the Mega Fan tier. Love you guys, no homo, or full homo, whatever floats your boat. Because of our awesome channel members, we were able to bring this jet to you today to showcase what it's capable of. So let's dive right into this review of the Two Brothers community for the Two Brothers community. You guys are awesome, and I wouldn't have it any other way. As always, we begin our approach to this review by seeing what the jet is capable of. The F-22's maneuverability is something else, no matter what scale we're talking about. There's very few jets out there that come close. The F-22 is considered one of the world's premier air dominance fighters, mostly because it's incredibly lethal at engaging targets beyond visual range, but also because it's so maneuverable that it's unable to be flown to its full potential by a human pilot inside the plane. Yes, I am saying that flying the full-scale Raptor to its full potential will kill you. You can get a good idea of just how truly responsive it can be by watching the 80mm on that YouTube screen though. The Freewing jet is both crisp and responsive, and with AS3X Plus, it feels like you're flying an extension of your mind rather than piloting the plane with a transmitter and stick gimbals. Focusing now on the review criteria for agility, the F-22 is not prone to accelerated stalls. These are the types of stalls that you experience while maneuvering a plane, and they're typically caused by breaking airflow over one or both wings while you're banking and yanking it. That's not going to be a problem with this jet. The large delta wings make it resistant to that kind of stall, so it's pretty stable overall. Where it does begin to get into trouble is trying to fly it at high angles of attack. Just like its big sister, the 90mm F-22, there is a point at which you stall out the vertical stabilizers and the jet begins to slide laterally. You can see that on display while I talk here. Fortunately, the 80 is significantly more resistant to this kind of issue at higher angles of attack than the 90 is, and that'll be something that we cover in depth on the upcoming tier ranking of the entire F-22 lineup from Freewing. It's easy to make this jet less nose-heavy, which checks off our next review metric. To do this, follow my physical setup by removing the Freewing gyro, the wood plate that the gyro sat on, and move the blue box to the back of the battery compartment. Put an SMC 5900 HV battery as far aft as it will sit, which will get you 25mm behind the marks on the wings. If you want to go even further than that, run SMC 4000 HV batteries all the way aft, but be prepared for unforeseen consequences, because you're definitely going to be flying on the dangerous side of the CG marks that way. Hitting our next criteria, taking off and landing without struggling, the F-22 does just that. It takes off gracefully just like you'd expect from the Raptor. It also lands exceptionally well. Now, you can make it land even better if you wire the jet up to fly on a 10-channel physical setup, which means you can enable reflexed ailerons with rudder air brakes, which, when combined with my AS3X Plus settings to come later, makes the damn jet almost impervious to wind. Seriously, we're looking at a 12-mile-an-hour crosswind in most of these landings, and the jet penetrates through the wind like it isn't even there most of the time. It's astounding. Of course, the gyro is helping here, but what also helps is the crow setup that I'm demonstrating. It requires approaching with more power on the backside of the curve, which allows the jet to penetrate wind, shear zones, and turbulence easy peasy. Our next agility point covers adequate thrust, and the 80mm 2150 kV motor that Freewing ships in all of their latest 80 jets shows up in this Raptor, giving it a very high thrust-to-weight ratio. It has more than adequate thrust for any maneuver that you want to do. Recovering from cobra maneuvers or flat spins just takes pushing the left stick upward, which leads us into our final review point in the agility category. Stall recovery is pretty easy with the gobs of thrust that you have to work with, especially with the gyro setup that I'm demonstrating here, which puts the Raptor firmly into fly-by-wire territory just like the full-scale jet. The F-22 earns a 5 out of 5 in our agility metrics. Moving onward into the flight time category, I find that doing nothing but touch and goes on a single 5900 HV battery from SMC gets me not 2, not 2.5, not 3, not 4, not 5, but over 7 minutes total flight time. That is astounding. Regular mixed throttle flying will get you at least 5 minutes if you're using the same battery that I am. If you're concerned about wing load with the heavier pack, don't be. It handles the weight just fine. It is a Delta wing after all. If you do want to go lighter and run a 4000 class pack from SMC, you can expect to fly at least 4 minutes. The flight time you can achieve with this jet has to be some of the longest I've reviewed so far, giving it a 5 out of 5. Very impressive. Moving to landing gear, we start to see that familiar issue that plagues most airplanes and model aviation. While the wheels do function, which ticks off our functional wheels checkpoint, they're stiff and they're plastic-like. That's a ding on our metrics. The wheels are attached to a pretty nice suspension system though, which is another pass, and I didn't see a single bounce even on hard landings. The gear didn't require any maintenance from what I could see, passing again, and they worked flawlessly, even to the point of fixing that atrocious gear cycle time that the F-14 and Eurofighter both suffered from. Instead of taking a long time to cycle the doors, they open and they close in a reasonable amount of time for a fighter jet, hitting our final checkpoint of working flawlessly. The F-22 earns a 4 out of 5 in this category. Fit and finish is our next segment, and the F-22 has to be the best looking jet that I've seen in recent memory. Seriously, just look at it. Tell me in good faith that it isn't absolutely beautiful. I bet you can't. The paintwork is impeccable, which passes our blotchy or damaged paint check. The foam wasn't dinged up or weird looking out of the box, passing that metric as well. The hinges are all gapless and the stabilators are just that, full-flying horizontal stabilizers, passing our checks yet again. It features decals instead of stickers, passing that check too, allowing you to see the gorgeous work that they put into the foam molding. And the decals weren't peeling up out of the box after extended flying sessions, passing the final check for this category. The F-22 earns a 5 out of 5 here. Moving on to our final review metrics, we now cover avionics and lighting. The servos are all metal and they're quite strong, passing our metal servos check, but as is typical for Freewing, they're not very precise. You can see visible steps in their movement when you're testing the control surfaces out. I highly suggest replacing the stabilator servos with high-tech D85 MG units, which is what I'm flying, linked below. Otherwise, a great budget option would also be Emax ES3054 HV units, which are also linked below. They drop right in with no work required to make them fit, unlike the high-techs, which need a little trimming to the servo to get them to fit into the pocket. I didn't notice any ESC overheating issues at all, which passes our checkpoint here. It's also winter in North America, so maybe we'll see that overheating problem in warmer months, but for now, it's handling well. If I had a time machine, I'd travel forward to summer and fly a bit and report back to you. Alas, I do not, so I can't. Sorry, I'll look into invalidating Einstein's theory of relativity at some point. Unlike the 90, which only features a single nose light, the 80 has a dual LED lamp on the nose wheel just like the full-scale jet, along with nav lights, something the 90 definitely needs for how much is being charged for it. Unlike the 90 F-22, this jet doesn't fail the lighting check, it actually has lights. Amazing. And what, it only cost $100 less compared to the 90? Not bad. Now, I almost gave it a pass on the battery tray, but it's definitely not well designed. The 90 absolutely shits on the 80's battery tray setup. There are very few places to put a receiver that won't contribute to nose heaviness, so your only option with this jet is to place the AR-10360T receiver under the tray and hope for the best. Definitely don't mount it to the foam walls of the battery tray. The AS3X system will get confused because the receiver can't mount exactly at a 90-degree angle if it's attached to any of the foam walls. Under the tray is the only place that I recommend putting it. Reinforce the screw threads in the wood holding the tray with thin CA so they won't get damaged, because the wooden tray is gonna be pressing into the receiver with the pressure of the screws holding it firmly in place. On the plus side though, some double-sided tape on the receiver will make sure that it can never wobble or move, so you'll get the most accurate gyro responses of any plane you've ever flown. The F-22 earns a 4 out of 5 here. Before we get into the overall scoring, let's talk about the setup that I'm flying. As always, I have 150 travel on all surfaces except where the surfaces might bind on the airframe, flying with 50% expo on pitch, roll, and yaw. The left aileron signal lead was unhooked from the ribbon cable connected to the blue box. You can use a sharp pair of tweezers to get it to unlock from the ribbon connector. As you can see here, it's the third signal lead from the rightmost signal wire. Once you get it free, cover it in heat shrink tubing and plug it into the port called for in my setup file, which you'll find on the Two Brothers Discord server. The heat shrink is critical because it'll prevent the cable from potentially shorting out the receiver. Now let's cover gyro gains for AS3X Plus, and I highly recommend using the Spectrum AR10360T receiver, which will give you enough channels to run 2 ailerons, 2 rudders, differential stabilators, also known as tailerons, and gyro-stabilized steering on the nose-wheel gyro system, which is absolutely amazing and is totally worth doing. There are no specialty mods to this airframe. All you need to do to follow my setup here is replace the stab servos, remove some plugs from the blue box, a plug from the ribbon connector, and follow the port assignments on the setup file that you'll find on our Discord server. If any of this is difficult for you, don't hesitate to ask for help on Discord. While I leave up the gyro gains here, I will say that if you choose the less expensive Emax servos instead of the high-tech units that I've recommended below, you should most likely run the gains a little higher to compensate. The Emax units are precise, but not quite as precise as the high-techs, so you'll need to compensate with a little bit of extra gain. Try it and find out what works best for you. Overall, the F-22 earns a 23 out of 25. If you can't tell by this point, I really love this jet. It handled well, and better than the 90 in some ways. Also, it looks gorgeous and true to scale, though I'm not a fan of my jet constantly calling me a hoe every time I look at the vertical tails. Though it flies with very few bad tendencies, unless you get it to the absolute edge of its performance envelope. Which is something I don't think many people are gonna do, but if you're crazy enough like me to try it, you'll see what I'm talking about. Fortunately, stall recovery is super easy, so if you ever get stuck in a weird maneuver, let off the throttle until the nose falls, and then throttle up again. Is it better than the 90? Yes, but no. In some ways, especially high alpha. But we'll deep dive into this in March with the F-22 tier ranking that will cover every F-22 that Freewing sells and give you a solid idea of which ones are worth your attention and why. To all of you channel supporters on twobrosrc.com, you made this video possible. It's a lot of work, time, and money to make this channel a reality at the quality level that we're shooting for, and you guys choosing to help us make it happen means the world to me. From the very bottom of my heart, straight out of my ugly mug, thank you so much for helping us do this. If you're not a channel supporter yet, hop over to twobrosrc.com/supporters to join our channel memberships and help us review airplanes that aren't sent out to demo by companies like Motion RC. That way everyone can benefit from our objective review system that gives you the info that you need to make an informed decision on what you're buying. Because trust me, I know as well as you guys do, these planes aren't cheap, and it's important to know if they're worth what companies are asking you to spend on them. Channel members also get access to exclusive behind-the-scenes footage where I chat with each one of you guys in a live stream on Discord demonstrating the uncut flight footage, answer your questions, and just chat with you guys in a fun and informal atmosphere. Coming up next week, we take a look at the Kevin Norden from FPVBuildsRC.com. This one might surprise you.